kind of a weird video because I'm usually not in front of the camera, but I guess things will do. My name is Retson Ross, for those that don't know me, and this is my story. So it all started back, I'd say, halfway through my junior year of high school. I picked up a 1970 Nova. That car was definitely a blast. I broke a lot of parts on it, and in exchange I learned how to replace them. When I picked it up, the engine was so-so. The wiring was horrible, and it was basically this guy up north had it on a farm, and he did some welding work for some guy, and in exchange he got this car. And so I picked it up, built it a little during the late junior high school senior year, and really kind of lost hope. I, of course, like we all do, ran into some bad bunches of people, and definitely it took its toll. I sold the car as is, and I took a little bit of loss on it. Not too much. I mean, I lost $200, but it was more of a sentimental value that was lost with that car. And for a while, I kind of just didn't really buy anything. I used some of that money to purchase more camera equipment and whatnot. And so I kind of, I guess, wasn't really involved in the car community for a little bit, just because, I hit a soft patch in the road. But after doing some research, I jumped towards the Japanese side and bought a 1987 Toyota Corolla. It was a GTS, sorry, not a GTS. It was an SR5 with a GTS rear end, with an LSD. There's a 1.5 way. Basically, just a fun little grocery getter car. And I drove to Fresno with a buddy of mine, Kyle, and we picked that up. And that was actually the first stick shift car that I ever owned. And so it was definitely a blast driving from Fresno back to where I live. There's a lot of hills and whatnot. And so at that point, I learned how to drive stick. And I had that car for 3 months. Yeah, I got tired of it. It was, I think, 87 horsepower or something like that. The GTS was a dual cam. This was the single cam, the more economy version of the car. And so I ended up putting it up for sale and selling it to a guy, which, kind of funny story, he was overseas when he sent the email, and I didn't really pay too much attention of it just because I'm familiar with all the Craigslist scams and whatnot. And so literally like 2 weeks after that, I get a call from the same guy, and he's back stateside and wants the car. And so he drove from like Hanford or something to pick the car up, and handed me the cash and wasn't even going to try driving it. I could have sold this guy for a lemon and he would have noticed, which I'm not that person. But we took it for a drive. I explained everything that was wrong, and he didn't even ask for a discount. He paid full price, which is cool. And so after I sold that car, again, I kind of just sat. I was kind of on a hiatus. I didn't really know what to do. And after a short moment of time, I started getting interested in 55 Chevys, 55 to 57. In particular, gassers, which, if you guys don't know what gassers are, they're basically race cars like this, with the rear of the car is super low. The front end is high, so it's easier to get the weight transfer when racing. Super old school 60s logic. And I just love, I love the whole style of the build. I don't know why. They look totally non-functional. They're not too comfy to drive on the street, but they just look cool. And so from there, I turned down into 1950s racing. The figurehead of drag. And, the more and more I researched and looked into it, the more I saw these guys with, Model A's and 32 Fords and 33 Fords and all these just super duper sick cars. And so it was about 4 months ago that I said, well, I'm going to buy a Model A. I have this amount of money saved up. I have my camera business that I can make money off of, and I'll just save up. Granted, I didn't have a job because I'm a full-time student. And so I was doing, as many side jobs or just weird odd end jobs um, to be able to afford a Model A. And so there was a few that I found around locally, within 40, 50 miles. None of them were really interested in selling the car to me because I guess every old timer wants, the car to be passed down to someone that can really cherish it and really build it and, not hack it up, which the problem is we see a lot of, hacked up old steel. And I mean, as a younger guy, it kind of makes me sad because that's one less car that someone my age can build. And so, constantly running into that problem, about 3 months go by, and I find one in Anaheim. And at that time, I had probably 6 or 7 Craigslist tabs open on my internet. And this one I wasn't really interested in because he had like 5 or 6 photos and they weren't really revealing. They're just super up close, so you didn't get to see the car that much. And it was taken with an older camera, so it wasn't high def. It didn't, it wasn't. I couldn't see everything, and so that itself was discouraging because the guy was about 3 hours south of me down in Anaheim. And so, I just kept looking and kept looking, never really paid too much attention of it. Luckily, my mom was also in this crazy state of mind. She says, I want a Model A, and you're going to buy a Model A. And so I went searching and searching, and then she found this guy, and she's like, look at this one. And I kind of just blew her off. I was like, oh, yeah, that's fine. That's cool. Whatever. I don't care. And so she calls the guy and no pickup, no answer. She calls him again like the day after. And after like 4 days of calling, the guy finally picks up. And it wasn't the guy, it was the son. And basically the story behind it was an older gentleman that owned it. His father passed away. And he had a few of them that he was selling. He didn't know how to work the computer, so his, sons and daughters put the ads up, and the sons and daughters didn't really know what they were. So of course that explains the super shallow pictures and whatnot. And so we're going down to Disneyland, and my mom's like, "We're gonna go check out that car." And I was like, "Well, fine, we're gonna go check it out." So I check it out, and I am head over heels for this car. The thing looks rad. It's a sports coupe. There's a few kind of interesting things. For example, with sport coupes, they have like this not vinyl, but like canvas top. And this one was a metal top. And just, a few things like that. And, I did my research beforehand to check the fenders and whatnot. And so overall, it was a very clean car. It was sitting in a barn since 1966. And 2 years ago, he actually picked it up. And it's been sitting ever since. And so it was super good. The only downside was one of the tires didn't hold air. And so we look at it, we thank him, and on the drive to Disneyland, all I'm thinking is, I want that car. I want that car. I want that car. And granted, it's a little out of my price range. Granted, I didn't have a job at the time, and I had a small amount of money that I had from flipping my other cars. And, well, 5 days goes by. 5 days? 4 days. And so 4 days go by, and I call him and I say, listen, I know you mentioned, because originally he mentioned that the fenders were so clean, he'd like to take them off for his own car. And so I said, listen, what's your price without the battery and without the fenders? I have this much. I'm 19. I really want the car. I'm not going to hack it up. And so a couple minutes goes by, and he tells me a price, and it's still kind of out of my range, but it's really good. So I say, done deal. I'll get the money in a week. And so the guy kind of blew me off, 19-year-old coming up with several $1,000s by himself. That's unheard of. Well, I mean, it's not unheard of, but it's kind of rare. And so I think I had like a couple jobs that I did, and I ended up becoming $700 short. And at that time, I had a pretty wicked handlebar mustache. And I ended up, coming up $700 short. So I talked to my mom. Hey, Mom, let me borrow $700. And she's like, shave the mustache. And I said, gone. So literally that day after, I shaved the mustache. Very depressing moment. And boom. And so we ended up going down there to pick up the car. And it was crazy. Burbank Hill was on fire. And I think we ended up waiting 3 hours for a tow truck. And being that both me and my mom have AAA cards, she used 100 miles on hers, I used 100 miles on mine. Well, in between that, we had to drop the car off in Ventura. And it happened that at the same time, Ventura County Fair was having the Primer National Car Show, I think, and swap meet. I don't know, I've never been. Anyways, so we drop off on the side of the highway, this little like gas station, and all these guys are walking up and wanting to take pictures and, wanting to tell me their stories about how they rode in the rumble seat or how their grandpa taught them how to drive stick in that car, and, all these super cool stories. And it was definitely, reassuring. I knew that I bought the right car because I'm a history buff. I love history. And so we get the car home, and it's in the state that it is as we speak. So there's a good story. About a week later, I'm looking, because it has flat tire, and we actually pulled the spare off and put that one on. But all of them were different sizes. It wasn't good. And so I'm on Ham, which is the honky ass message board, I want to say it's called. And I found a guy selling 35 Ford wheels, bias ply tires, and they look pretty mint. And so I ended up picking those up, and really that's all I've done to the car right now. I plan on keeping the patina for a little bit, down the road, probably painting it with lead paint. Just right now I plan on making it run and drive. I have a almost 90-year-old grandfather, and I plan on, taking him out, just putting on the beach and having a fun time, just, being hooligans in the car. Because back in the day, he had a 29A, just basic coupe. And so he hasn't seen the car yet, but I'm hoping to surprise him. He knows that I bought one, and he's kind of jealous, but I'm happy and kind of excited to surprise my grandfather. Well, that's the first video. I appreciate you guys watching. Definitely recommend subscribing, as I will continue putting up videos like this. Probably not as long. This is more of a story time than anything. But I really appreciate it, and keep on rocking.